episode 139, Prolon Fast Mimicking Diet Deep Dive. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Trosclair, and today we're Dr. James Kelley's perspective. Join 2017 and 2018 Podcast Awards nominated hosts as we get a behind-the-curtain look at all types of doctors and guest specialties. Let's hear a doctor's perspective. Welcome back. We are going to go all kinds of deep into Prolon Fast Mimicking Diet based off the Walter Longo PhD's book. This is the 5-day fast that I've been doing. I just finished my third series. My results are not in as far as the blood work goes, so hang tight. During the dentist series, which is next week, I'll be able to give you the highlights on that. If you're interested in the dentist series, it's going to be for 4 weeks. If you want to get the show references PDF, by all means, visit adoctorsperspective.net/dentist with an S, and you can get that. It's a nice quick reference guide. Think you're going to like it, just like the ones we've done for podiatry and acupuncture and all the rest. I want to big thanks to Dr. Silverman from episode 135. He was talking about nutrition and gut health, and he was instrumental in getting me the interview with Dr. Kelley. He is the medical liaison for the Prolon L-nutra company. So pretty much his job is to do podcasts and talks and go to see doctors and answer their questions and, all that kind of stuff. Once again, I want to mention from episode 122, Christy Boyles. She owned the 9 podiatry clinics and had Marfans, and that led to her Allied Wellness clinics. Well, that again is live now, alliedwellness.com.au, covering hydration, nutrition, sleep, stress management, and movement. Again, it's a resource for the doctor to be able to give to the patient. Now, you can sell that to the patient and give them access and all these different kinds of articles, but it's a way for you to get people the information that they probably need for their own health without you actually having to devote the amount of time and energy it is to be that resource because she's done it for you. So you're going to get tools to assess, booklets, diaries, all those types of things. You can even hold a workshop with it. Use promo code podcast, and save 100 Australian dollars. So that's 297 Australian dollars, 201 US dollars, 180 euros, or 21,000 Japanese yen, because I have listeners in Japan. It's one of the higher ones in my repertoire. Okay, and real quick, things that we're going to cover on this episode with Prolon. What is it? How do you fast, but yet you can eat? Stem cell regeneration. Does that really happen? How's that happen? What's the point? Apoptosis, autophagy, however you want to say it. These are the things that happen. Your body goes into ketosis, but if you just go on a keto diet versus this, is there a difference? The breakdown of macronutrients that the thing's going to have, plus ghost carbons. Ooh, what's that? They came up with some new flavors recently. We'll discuss the headache that you might get, and again, the stem cells. It's a really good overview of everything that we want to know, plus a little bit more of a deep dive, since you can just listen to Dr. Longo on some of the podcasts that he's been on to just hear more of the basics and the theory behind it. So we just get into the meat and potatoes. So all the show notes can be found at adoctorsperspective.net/139. Let's go. # behind the curtain. Live from China and California. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the Prolon L-nutra Fast Mimicking Diet from the Dr. Longo's research, but now it's the product that you can use for a week. If you listen to the podcast over the last couple of months, you've probably heard my own journey. I'm on month 2. I've done month 2. I've got one more month to go. And who we have today is kind of the medical liaison guy. He development in early stage medical and biotechnology. He also worked with the Innovation Institute, which was partnered with the Cleveland Clinic back before this job. So really excited to pick his brain. Dr. James Kelley, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Whew. I'm going to assume for this podcast that people know what I'm talking about a little bit. They either read the book, they've heard about it, and so we'll just kind of go into more pointed questions that I had. But before we do that, give us just the brief overview. What is the diet, the science a little bit behind it, and why we should care, which I'm sure you've answered 100 times.
No, that's my one. I like talking about it, so I don't mind at all. And 2, it is actually what I get paid to do. So it's a sort of a confluence of both worlds. So I'm the medical science liaison for L-nutra. We are the makers of the Prolon 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And Prolon is prolonging longevity is what it stands for. And the diet is essentially designed to trick your body into going into a fasting state. So there's two things you have to know about it. One, why is fasting beneficial? And two, how does this mimic a fast? So very, very, very briefly, what we're really going for is stem cell-based regeneration and rejuvenation. And the way you get there, and there are a number of other health benefits that go along with fasting for more than a couple of days as well, but it takes a couple days to activate the processes in your body that clean it up. So basically what happens is if you're always eating, you're never going to run out of energy, so the body never has to be efficient. And if the body never has to be efficient, it can tolerate damaged tissue. And then damaged tissue, in the end, goes on to do things that aren't always great. A lot of aging and age-related disease is directly related to eating too much. So if you go into a fasting state where your cells actually run out of energy and are forced to do a sort of self-assessment because your body doesn't want to waste what little energy it has, every cell takes a look at itself and says, are you broken, or can you be repaired, or do you need to be deleted and replaced? And those two processes are called autophagy and apoptosis. And we'll talk about those more, I'm sure, in a bit. But autophagy and apoptosis, or apoptosis, if you want to say it, the alternative pronunciation, are basically the way your body gets rid of or cleans up damaged tissue. And it takes 2 days in humans. Most of the autophagy and apoptosis appears around hour 48 to 96 of a fast, which is day 3 and 4 of a prolonged fast. And then on day 5 is when you start to see stem cells sort of ramp up in the bloodstream. So it takes about 4 to 5 days to really get this total body cleanup. And we don't know what percentage of the body cleans itself up over those 4 or 5 days, but that's really the only way to get there. The problem is if you try to do a water-only fast where all you're doing is drinking water and eating nothing for 5 days, the vast majority of people drop out by day 2. It's just really, really, really challenging to do. And on top of that, you will eat a lot of your lean body mass because the way the body works is 12 hours into a fast, you're out of the glucose from your last meal. Your body doesn't go into full ketosis till about day 3. And even in full ketosis, that only provides about half the energy you need. Your body will get the rest of the energy from itself, cannibalizing not just fat, but also glycogen and amino acids in your muscles.
So no matter what, your body still takes that amount of time, whether you ingest no calories.
Yeah, water or fasting mimicking diet is going to take a while. But in the meantime, if you're not eating anything, your body's going to cannibalize its own muscle for the first 2 days. And then it gets into a protein-sparing state, and it'll preserve most of your muscle, but it'll still eat a little bit. What Dr. Longo, the head of Longevity Institute at USC, our founder, figured out was that you can trick the body's pathways. You can hide from the things that notice nutrition, because the cells go into this fasting state not because they're starving, but because they get a signal to go into a fasting state. And if you hide from the pathways that recognize nutrition, you can still send that signal even though you're sneaking food into the body. So what Prolon is a very, very carefully measured, clinically validated kind of a stealth food where it has a particular ratio of macros, and we'll talk about this too. I think you and I have already spoken about that. It has a very specific macronutrient ratio and caloric content that's designed to not trigger your body's alarms for growth. And if you can sneak food in without triggering those alarms, you can give the body the energy it needs to preserve muscle and to keep you busy and fed during a fast, but you can still keep those cells in that regenerative state. So you can still get all the same autophagy, apoptosis, and stem cell-based regeneration while still giving people food. And that's really all Prolon is stealth food.
Okay.
So sorry for the long version.
No, that's good. I think that's the great overview of what we're talking about. And as a person who's taken it twice now, there's only like one day where you really feel, in my opinion, quite hungry because they removed the snack. It's like the after lunch to dinner, they're like, there's no snack. And you're like, what? Come on. And it's like olives. Yeah, it's not a lot, but I was kind of surprised the amount of food that you can eat, while, the amount of food you'll package in there.
Yeah, we try to make a little feel like a lot, but it's still not a ton of food. But you do get 3 meals a day, plus some days snacks, plus drink, plus dessert, plus herbal teas and vitamins and minerals and nutrients. So we do our best, but it's about 1,150 calories day 1, and then about 800 calories for day 2 through 5.
So I had 2 follow-up questions. I guess I'll ask. One of them is going to be, it's 800 calories. On Facebook, you join a group, you're just like, okay, let me get some help with this. And the group is just a ton of people that are trying to mimic the diet.
The mimicking diet, yeah.
Here's the macros, there's this much fat and protein, and they're looking at the ingredients, and they're like, okay. And then the amount of time that these people are spending versus just spending the $200 to $250 is just unreal to me. Yeah. But then I want to flip that on the side as well. Say people who are probably in the keto diet, I think they would say, look, I'm already in ketosis. My body's already using fat versus the
Mm-hmm.
sugar. So is that helping? Or should I get into ketosis first through the salts or changing my diet for a few days and then doing the Prolon? What are y'all finding with?
Yeah, so those are great, great. So there's a couple things in there, and I'll try and quickly address them. One is the mimicking of the mimicking diet, and then the other is ketosis and what's its relation to this. How does it help? I like ketosis. I'm kind of a moderation guy, though. Everything in moderation. I wouldn't do. A lot of people do it for 6 months at a time. I would never do it for more than 2 or 3 weeks. I'll talk about that in a sec. But mimicking the diet. So Dr. Longo is pledged all of his shares to charity. So the wonderful thing about working here is that we kind of are walking the walk. We're really trying to do something for the good of humanity. I don't get paid on sales of the product. I'm here to make sure people are well educated on what we're doing and that they understand how to be safe and effective with the diet. So I do a lot of training with physicians and a lot of answering of customer questions. So I don't have any dog in the race if you want to try and copy the diet. Dr. Longo even publishes the ratios in his book, The Longevity Diet. So he wants people to be able to do this. The downside is at this point, we're about $50 million in of federally funded research and grant money validating this clinically. We spent a huge portion of that developing the product itself. And we didn't do that because we're bad at spending money. We did that because it costs that much to get it right. So the idea that you can go home and kind of make it in your kitchen, you may be able to, but there's a couple reasons why it's not necessarily going to work. One, it has to be certain types of food. It has to be certain glycemic index. While we do know the ratio of less than 10% protein, 35% carbs, 5% sugar, 50% healthy fat, at about 770 to 800 calories a day on day 2 through 5, there's also a couple other things we do. We have almost an entire full day's serving of fiber per day on the diet, despite having less than half the calories of recommended daily allowance. We have almost full fiber, so the glycemic index is going to be quite a bit lower. Two, we do a lot with what they call ghost carbons, which are carbons that your body doesn't recognize. So certain sources don't trigger those pathways. Glycerin is one of them. So I know I mentioned it a bit ago that we help preserve lean body mass because we give your body something to eat besides muscle. Glycerin is one of those things. So it's hard to get the right amount of glycerin per body weight, and we went through the work of validating what that amount is. That's what that L drink is on day 2
Oh, yes,
to
that
5.
little drink. Yeah.
So that's the thing that's really going to give your body. It's kind of basically an energy drink because your body will, when you're in mild to moderate ketosis and glucagon is up, it's going to drive glycerin into the Krebs cycle and you're going to make energy out of it. And it can do a couple other things too. It can even go through ketosis. But glycerin is kind of unusable when you're not in a starvation state. You just urinate it out. So there's a lot of tricks we do that are really advanced in how we develop the product. So if you want to try and copy it, you make it kind of close. I'll tell you this. I work here, and I work with our nutritionists to develop an alternative version that a friend of mine who hates Mediterranean food could do. And we went through all this effort, and we did it. And she got none of the metabolic changes that she had gotten when she did the diet that we actually sold. So I will say that I'm an expert in this, and I still didn't do a good job mimicking it. So if you are going to do it on your own at home, one, make sure you're safe. If you're on any medication, you need to do this under supervision of a doctor because it isn't necessarily safe for everybody to go into a fasting state. And two, if you don't get the results you thought you would, don't write off fasting mimicking. Consider that maybe you just didn't get it quite right, and through no fault of your own.
And they won't say that. I tried it. No, you didn't. You tried a really weird version that you created yourself.
Yeah. I get a lot of phone calls where people are trying to basically get me to give them the secrets, and I'm like, there are no secrets. We just did the work. You basically have to do the work to use the product. So I generally just tell people, just do the box we have. If you're not eating for 5 days, you're going to save a lot of money. We know ours works. Just give it a shot. If you have a specific reason why you can't do our version, I understand that. Talk to us. We'll see what we can do. So that's
And before you jump into the keto part, y'all just came out with new flavors, which I was like, oh, I was 2 weeks too late, or too early. But I'm assuming the same research went through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think we initially researched 9 different flavors of soup, and we had to do the same clinical testing on all of them. And the new flavors we've released are essentially 2, I believe. There's 2 more that we're refining, but 2 of the 4 are finally released. And so these are all, they were all part of our initial research. And we have a couple more, I think there's 13 or 14 total that we've been working on, but these have all gone through the same clinical rigor. These are not just, let's change the flavors up. These are really validated at this point. So
we got these done, then we had to create, these finally got passed, these passed. All right, good. We're still getting the results that we're going to talk about in a second after you talk about the ketosis part, the blood work that matters. Okay.
So on to the keto question. The keto one's a great question. The ketosis is part of the diet. The vast majority of people by day 3 are going to be into mild to moderate ketosis of about 1.5 millimoles per deciliter. I believe that's the measurement, 1.5 whatevers. They're in ketosis. They vacillate between 0.8 and 1.5, and 1.5 is considered full ketosis. But that's not really the purpose of the diet. You will burn visceral fat. You will lose quite a bit off your waist. It is targeted fat loss for people who have fat to lose. If you're pretty close to where you want to be, you're not going to lose much weight. But the reality of what we're going for is that cleaning up of damaged tissue, which co-occurs with ketosis in some cases, but ketosis alone is not enough to cause that. Ketosis has way too high protein in general. Protein is going to turn on IGF-1, which I know you and I have mentioned before in the past. IGF-1 is insulin-like growth factor 1. It's the thing that bodybuilders eat a lot of protein for. They want to stimulate their growth hormone. If you eat animal protein in particular, you ramp up your IGF-1, and that allows you to grow. It deposits tissue, muscle gets built out of the protein you're eating. So the act of eating protein increases IGF-1. The act of working out also increases IGF-1. So you couple those together, that's how you get muscle growth. We're trying to inhibit that for 5 days just to trigger that cleanup mechanism. Dr. Longo has more or less validated that we have way too high IGF-1 in America. We're eating way too much protein. But I'm not going to get into the debate of whether protein is good. I'm going to stick to the side of the only way you can get the cellular cleanup is by lowering protein for 5 days. We'll ignore everything else and just focus on that. So keto diets are not going to cause regeneration and rejuvenation. You may burn a little fat, so you are going to get a little autophagy, but it's not damaged tissue autophagy. It's just fat autophagy. So, so it's a little bit different, but it is part of the diet. So if you're in ketosis before you go into the diet, you're probably going to have a much easier transition. So day 2,
that's
very common for people to get a big headache on day 2 if they're not already in ketosis ahead of time. Another thing is,
that's probably their coffee intake.
Yeah, so coffee's part of it. There's 3 reasons we think. One is caffeine withdrawal, because if you drink a lot of caffeine or coffee in general, you're going to activate protein kinase A, which is PKA, one of the pathways we're trying to inhibit to trigger cleanup. So there's 3 main ones: IGF-1, mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, and PKA. So if you do inhibition of all 3 of those with very low protein, very low sugar, moderate carbs, you can, at a low calorie intake, put the body in a fasting state. And if you drink too much caffeine, you're reactivating one of those pathways. So that's why there's a limit on coffee. So if you're weaning off of coffee, you're going to get a headache on day 2. But even people who don't drink any caffeine get a bad headache if they're not super well hydrated, if their electrolytes are out of whack a little bit. Just going into a fasting state, the presence of beta-hydroxybutyrate initially makes some people nauseous or have a headache. It just does. And then transitioning from high insulin to low insulin, high glucagon can also trigger that. There's a number of things that we're not quite sure about, but in general, if you've done keto before, it's going to be an easier transition. So we do see that. So people who want to try and ease it, if they've done the fast in the past and felt terrible on day 2 or even late on day 1, going into keto beforehand or eating a very clean, high plant-based diet ahead of time with a ton of vitamins and minerals and staying hydrated will probably really help you. So
you probably want to avoid the MCT oils and the ketone salts that some of the places, if you're in ketosis, if you're that person, you're like, yeah, man, I'm banging these ketone salts. I'm taking the MCT oil in my coffee. And all those things actually have calories. And I'm assuming if you take either one of those products, you're going to ruin your 5 days because it's off.
It's a pretty tight metric. We put as much food as we could in there before we start to trigger the pathways. So if you add anything outside it, you're probably going to throw it off. MCT oil, while I think it's great outside of the diet, on the diet is probably not going to work too well for you. Same with any dairy or sugar in your coffee. You just got to drink plain black coffee. You can have a cup of coffee per day, but anything more than about 90 milligrams of caffeine is going to jack up the diet, at least from what we can tell. So
this is like my disclaimer, don't do this, people. I know what you're thinking.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
and then I try to caution everyone because they're like, well, if what you made is good, I want to make it great. So they want to ramp it up and do an extra high version. And I'm like, listen, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but there is a limit to what your body can do. And if you keep adding things, you're going to knock off our science and start screwing up other stuff. So if you just do what we said, you're much more likely to get the results in the diet. Can you get better ones? Maybe. We haven't tested it, but what we made is what seems to, for the vast majority of people, be the right ratio to give them the benefit. So I just tell everybody, I know what you're trying to do. And the other thing, they want to take a bunch of supplements. If you think of this is something that's been debated a lot, but the theory we have is you actually don't want to support your damaged tissue. You don't want to give those fragile cells any extra robustness. You want them to look as bad as they can so that when you go into the fasting state, they're the first ones to get cleaned up or replaced. If you're taking a lot of supplements that stabilize your cell membranes and keep your mitochondria super healthy, if you take those during our diet, you may actually be doing yourself a disservice. Now, again, we aren't cutting our patients open and delicately examining their innards on a cellular level, so what we're talking about is more bench research and academic, but it sure holds up. So just do what we included in the box. Don't bring anything in extra, and you're more likely to get the benefit.
Because I thought I'd read somewheres when you're doing this, your organs might shrink a little.
Yeah.
But then they regenerate.
Yeah.
The output is the same, but they actually are smaller. And then when you eat on the 6th day, it rebuilds.
Yep.
So mention that, and then mention how important it is on the 6th day to what you're supposed to, or what would you ideally eat so that way you heal better.
So you've done your homework. This is great. So, and I talk about this quite a bit. So in mice, we can, and I apologize to everyone out there. These are the way we do the IRB trials. You sacrifice the least amount of animals necessary to validate that you're going to be safe for humans. And that's just the nature of the beast. These animals have hopefully gone to help save lives. Some of the stuff we're working on in the future. And they're treated very humanely if there is such a thing. So in any case, that's my disclaimer. Like, we do our best to try to make sure but if you want to validate that you're causing stem cell based regeneration and autophagy and apoptosis, you have to do dissection and staining. At this point, we don't have any better tests. In humans, we're obviously not doing that. We're not cutting their brains open and frozen sectioning them to demonstrate neuroregeneration. So what we do in humans instead to validate that this does what we said it's going to do is we did MRI of people on the diet, and we did lab testing, and then we did post hoc analysis too. So what we see on the diet is from day 0 to day 5, your spleen and your liver, which are large organs and easy to measure the size change, do get significantly smaller. If you look at the blood outputs, the levels of those organs are the same or better. So you have a smaller organ now, and then it's not just dehydration. We can actually measure whether it's cellular volume that's lost, and it actually is cells. So they are shedding cells. And you see the output remaining the same or getting better. So you have a smaller organ doing the same or more work. That's optimization or autophagy. Those are damaged tissue that has been repaired and improved. And then after you eat again on day 5, you see these organs get larger. And at the same time, you eat again on day 6, I should say, eat traditional food. Those organs get larger rapidly over the next couple weeks. And at the same time, you see the stem cells in the bloodstream that went way up during the diet. By day 5, they're up by about 800%. And we'll talk about which stem cells those are too, if you like.
Yeah, please.
After you finish the diet, they go down fairly quickly. And they probably go down because they're migrating into the tissue and making a newer, larger organ. And that's exactly what you're seeing, this organ get larger. So now you have evidence that it shrunk and got more efficient, so autophagy and apoptosis, shedding cells. And then it got larger, and that's evidence of stem cell-based regeneration. So now we've done the same thing that we did in mice without cutting people open. So we've demonstrated that we're probably doing what we say we're doing.
And what should we eat on that 6th day? I know it kind of tells you, but
no, so we're a very science-driven company, and if we haven't published a trial on it, we tend to not talk about it. So the problem is, on the clinical trial, we wanted to validate that everything you see on the diet is just from the diet itself, all the results. So the only thing we modified in everybody's lives, we kept everything else controlled. Don't increase your workouts, Don't change your diet between cycles. Just eat these 5 days. And because of that, we didn't actually test what diet they should be eating on day 6. So day 6 is sort of a bit of a guessing game. We do know you've been on essentially bowel rest for 5 days. You've been eating very soft, plant-based food. So a couple things are going to make you feel sick. If you eat too much solid food, your stomach's going to grind away and you're not going to feel very good. If you eat too much sugar or protein, you're probably going to feel pretty nauseous. So, and in some cases, you may even get sick. So we generally advise everybody start liquid and advance as tolerated up to solids. We recommend they follow a Mediterranean-style diet just because if you look at the blue zones, the longest living people on Earth, they all eat a very blue zone-style diet. So on day 6, things that are, you eat healthy fats, healthy plant-based carbs, avoid animal proteins. If you have to eat something, you could have some fish for dinner, something soft, and gear towards the leafy greens and the fruits. So I know that they mention in our little meal guide things like juices and then pasta, which is sort of, I guess, if you got to pick something, that's...
We didn't say the never-ending pasta bowl. We meant just a handful.
Don't go to Olive Garden. Eat a reasonable amount. And the nice thing about the diet is it's a little bit of a cognitive retraining. People have a different relationship with food. Like for me, it's a kickstart. I've been eating poorly for a couple months. I do the diet. I no longer crave the bad stuff, and I don't crave as much of it. So for me, it's like behavioral. It's like a free way to trick my body into being more well-behaved. So
in reality, his longevity diet book that he wrote with the orange and white cover, he's not a big proponent of protein, really, animals at all. Yeah. He's like, look, you eat animal, IG1 goes up. IG1 goes up, your mTOR goes up, you're probably going to have more heart disease, you're probably going to have more cancer. In general, he's just like, yo, stop eating animals, maybe every now and then, but eat fish.
I think he's pretty much just a pescatarian, and even then, very, very rarely. And the reasoning is pretty sound, because if you look at, he makes a really good point really early on in the book that if you try to cure cancer, you're going to improve people's lives on average by 2 or 3 years. If you try to cure if you cure all 5 of the top major diseases, you will extend human life by about 15 years on average. If you intervene in aging, instead of trying to treat those diseases, if you just intervene in aging itself, half as well as we can do with mice right now, you live 30 years longer. So it's a nice little point that these are all age-related diseases. If you just slow the aging, you're not going to have as many diseases. And if you give the body the opportunity to regenerate, you're going to have even less. So at least that's the thinking. And in mice, it certainly holds up. We just have to do much larger, very long trials in humans to show that. But the evidence is good that if you eat a bunch of protein, you're just ramping up aging. Growth is aging. The more rapidly you grow, the more you use up the copies of the cells you have. Every time you replicate cells, you increase DNA error. So you increase the possibility of DNA error-related diseases, including cancer, and heart disease and diabetes. So growth is a good thing from a muscle standpoint, but we do way too much of it. So once you hit your peak, you need to do something to help clean your body up. And that's what he's focused on. Just keep your protein lower. You can still eat some, but we just eat way too much here, and we end up in trouble. So,
and we don't need to be trying to take anything like glutathione or milk this or anything like that afterwards for my liver was doing all this, and if I'm already in a state of regrowth and all this, if I just take something that would support liver detox, I'm air quoting, that it would help even more. It's like, I'm assuming no, just let your body do what it would do naturally.
Well, I'll say that I can't definitively say any of those are bad things. I don't know that they are. I will say if you're trying to ramp up growth right after you did a growth slowing diet, you may be doing yourself a disservice. There are people who have metabolic abnormalities who may benefit from things like that. But so far, we haven't seen a lot of convincing data that shows that it's worth it. There are a lot of people that we work with who do that with their patients, and so far they seem to have had good results. So I'm very much keeping an open mind about it, but I tend to err more towards the side of show me the data, show me that you need it, and I'm happy to do it. So
okay, Dr. Kelley, we got one big question here, and I'll just string them together because they all run together.
Go for it.
We're doing the blood work the day, the week before you do the start of the first month. At the about 10 days after the third month, we're supposed to retake it, like CRP, your lipid panels, HDLs, LDLs, things like that. So those are the things that you're going to see drop. If you go on the webpage, you go to the doctor resources, you'll see where the papers say that. But if you're someone like me who's like, hey, I could probably get patients on this, there's definitely legal reasons that you can't actually claim these things get better, although in the office, that's probably what you're going to be looking for. And then I'm going to bridge it into this. You got several studies out there looking at diabetes, endothelial glycocalyx dimensions. We've got some of the fatigue and muscular resistance, the safety and efficacy. Because here's the deal. You're like, hey, if you're on these drugs, you got to keep taking these drugs. But if you have diabetes and all this stuff, we don't really want you to do the diet. And I'm like, well, wait. The hypertension and maybe the pre-diabetics are the people that maybe are on metformin but not on insulin can take it. So I know there's legal things that you can't say, but those are the people that really need this diet, and probably one of the easiest ones to find because so many people are on Lipitor and metformin. So I guess that's the question. If you're on Met, are you done, or is it like you're on insulin? Don't do this diet. Like how are we supposed to navigate this, man?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So and I apologize, you are asking great questions, not just blowing smoke. So as the medical science liaison, I don't get paid on sales, but there are some restrictions around what we can talk about. Typically, we don't want to discuss medications because we haven't validated what medications are safe and what aren't. But if you just look from a biochemistry standpoint,
we don't want anybody to drop insulin so much when they pass out and, I hit my head because I didn't have any sugar.
Exactly. That's one of the challenges. So I'll say this. We as a company do not recommend this for diabetics unsupervised. We actually don't even recommend it for practitioners to use with diabetics because we don't have efficacy and safety data. We are in the process of doing that with an investigator-initiated trial, meaning it's not done through the company. A doctor just wanted to do this, and we're supporting with boxes, but not with funding. So it's an independent trial. But until we have really well-controlled and safe studies that demonstrate that this is not going to put people in trouble because our product can lower blood glucose and their medications can also lower blood glucose, we're very, very careful. We put patient safety first. I'd rather you not get the benefit than you try to get the benefit and end up doing some harm. So so we are very careful about that. There are doctors who elect to ignore us. We've seen people do the diet and do all kinds of things with the medications. It's stuff that I can talk to people. If you're a practitioner, I can talk to you one-on-one about what we've seen people do, but we don't recommend it as a company. I apologize very much for the language. We just take...
No, you got to do it. It's a real risk. That's why I thought I'd ask because...
Yeah, and I agree. If you look on paper, it looks like they're probably candidates that may benefit. But I want to highlight we are still in the preliminary data gathering stage. So even though in our clinical trials, published research demonstrated one particular thing, it was on a limited sample size and no one in the trial had diabetes. Dr. Longo has done other research on fasting and diabetes and fasting mimicking diets and beta cell regeneration in the lab setting. So there are some very, very exciting things coming out, but they're very preliminary, and I just want to caution everybody listening. I know what you want. I want the same things for you, but more than anything, I want you to be safe. So until we have that data, we're going to be very tight-lipped about it. Please accept my apologies on that one.
And with that, this interview is done. No.
So the statins, by the way, Dr. Longo has gone on record as saying he thinks aspirin and statins are very safe with the diet. So if you're on cholesterol medications and aspirin, those are the two meds that we don't really worry about. Okay. As a company, we feel that they're probably safe, but we haven't done the studies. So again, we rely on if you have a medical diagnosis and you take a prescription medication, it's always best to go through your doctor, your licensed healthcare practitioner who understands more about how this product might work with those. So because
we don't want
even though it is
dropping
just
into
food,
a coma.
Yeah, we just want everyone to be safe. And there have been people who've tried to do this on their own who have not done well. So those are the reasons we take it very seriously. And I appreciate everyone at home listening. Promise we're not some scaredy cats. We're doing it for a reason. So just bear with us. We'll work through it, and hopefully we'll get some data in the near future that allow us to be a little more open about it. But at the moment...
That's some serious research, though. Like, to get that part, like, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's going to take a lot of time, a lot of years. So at this point, it's just...
Yeah. And right now, despite the fact that the FDA and the federal government are our major financial backers, they don't have a pathway right now for us to do an FDA trial because it's a box of food. And until they do, we won't be able to make any medical claims around specific diseases. So even though we have a lot of...
But you actually do have a couple of patents, right?
We do have quite a number of patents, but we can't make medical claims because of patents. We have the world's first longevity patent for a diet. We have a couple other patents around the application of fasting mimicking with cancer and with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's, neurodegenerative diseases, and a number of other things. But patents are not the same as medical claims from the FDA. So we
still have to have that little FDA thing.
So we still need FDA approval on a couple of those things. So we're doing our diligence. We're doing it right. We're trying to make sure that we don't open our mouths before we can support what we're saying. So appreciate everyone's patience. I know it's a slow process. We're doing as much as we can, as fast as we can.
Awesome. Well, that's kind of what I got for you. We're going to respect your time. Give us some of the websites, contact information, so we can check out more of this stuff.
Sure. If you want to learn more about the diet itself, it's prolonfmd.com, which is PROLONFMD.com, which is Prolon Fasting Mimicking Diet.com, basically. If you want to learn more about what we're working on as a company and take a look at some of the trials that we have underway with different products that are not Prolon, you go to L-nutra, L-N as in Nancy, UTRA.com. That's our corporate website. And that talks a little bit about our future state. So we're hoping to one day, and that's one of the things that Dr. Longo he has 60% ownership of the company, and all of his shares go to a charity that all of the profit and revenue goes towards researching using nutrition as a medical treatment for disease. So we're working on things like, again, neurodegenerative diseases, cancer, autoimmune disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, lupus, rheumatoid, etc. We're working on a lot of great stuff. We're very excited about it. It's going to be years away, but we're trying to do it right. We're trying to make sure we protect you guys and we give you the best product that'll give you the best results possible. So,
Dr. Kelley, thank you so much for taking your time, hanging out with us, and answering my questions. And hopefully other doctors who are listening to this podcast are like, just give me some more meat and potatoes. So I'm really happy to hope them people.
Yeah, well, if you guys have any specific questions, reach out to us as a company. We've got a great medical science team. There's 4 docs now on staff. We have a really, really talented nutritionist. Reach out. You may end up talking to me or my wonderful colleague, Dr. Tracy Thomas, who is sitting right across from me. But so I encourage you guys, reach out to us. We're here for you. And thank you so much for having me on this. It's a lot of fun.
Another great interview has ended. While you're on your phone, click that review button. Write up a nice review for me. 5 stars if you could. As everyone says in the industry, it'll help other people to find us when we have enough rankings. Not to mention, I'll mention you and your review on an upcoming episode. If you follow me at all on Instagram, you know you only get one link. So I use a Linktree. And so it's a doctorsperspective.net/links with an S. And that's going to give you everything you need to know. The top episodes of 2017 and 2018, the podiatry series, dentist, acupuncture series, holiday 2017, financial series, how to write a review, how to support the show, like buying a cup of coffee, getting swag, like t-shirts, the Today's Choices, Tomorrow's Health book. That's the blueprints for better health, exercise, picking food correctly, and financial. And then, of course, bundle packs, which can get you the No Needle Acupuncture book for 40 common conditions, including the electric acupuncture pin at a great deal. The resources page has some of the products that I like. It's affiliate style, so if you buy something from them, I get a piece of that. Just like on the show notes pages, if you buy a book from clicking that link, I get a small piece of that as well. So I really appreciate that. Things like Screencast-O-Matic, Pure VPN, Missing Letter, JLab speakers, Prolon Edge or Hawk grips. Once again, if you do need any coaching on how to improve some of your blood work, drop weight, and the Prolon diet, fast mimicking diet, 5-day plan, let me know. As well as if you just need some coaching, whether it's health, whether it's marketing, whether you need some practice growth, etc. Reach out. Facebook, Justin Trosclair, MCC. Of course, at a doctorsperspective.net on the top right, you got all the social media icons that you can imagine. Click your favorite and reach out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell a friend, pass it along. You can go to .net/listen. It's just that easy. It'll open up right in your app. And don't forget, I appreciate you. Listen, critically think, and integrate. See you on the mini-sodes on Thursdays and Saturdays. Hope you're enjoying those. I'm definitely having fun summarizing these podcasts in less than 10 minutes for you. You get the nuggets without having to waste your time. Have a great week. We just went #behind the curtain. I hope you will listen and integrate what some of these guests have said. By all means, please share it across your social media, write a review, and if you go to the show notes page, you can find all the references for today's guest. You've been listening to Dr. Justin Trosclair, giving you a doctor's perspective.